Greetings. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Matthew Pillmore. I'm president of VIP Enterprises, and we're known nationally as cash flow experts. Now, what that means is we help both consumers and small business owners maximize the money that they have left over at the end of the month. So this is going to be a very exciting class because what we're going to focus on today is how to use hard money the right way in order to buy rental properties and build a rental portfolio with little or no money out of your own pocket. How would that strike you? Having 2, 3, 10 properties where you didn't have to put much of anything, if anything at all, down in order to acquire this new income producing asset. Now, if you've seen our 100% debt-free for life class, then you know that there are other ways that you can achieve these same results. But we're going to focus on one here today with somebody that I have a great deal of respect for. Now, before we dive right in, let's go over a couple quick housekeeping details. The first is that this presentation is for educational purposes only, as are all of our trainings. It is in no way a substitute for financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. For guidance pertaining to your specific situation or the governing laws in your state, please make sure you consult with a specialist in your area. And as always, take advantage of the personal implementation coaching session that's provided with our 100% debt-free for life, including your real estate class. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and hand this over to Kevin and dive right in. What would a hopeful real estate investor expect to learn during today's training?
First of all, Matt, I want to thank you and the entire VIP team for even putting these awesome webinars together. I also want to thank the listener. I know that you probably have other things that you could be doing, and you chose to sit in on this presentation, and that means a lot to both Matt and myself, and we promise to do the absolute best we can to give you the value that you're looking for. So your question, Matt, was, by the end of the presentation, what can we expect? I promise that you'll have the information you need to buy a portfolio of cash-flowing real estate with little or no money down, like thousands of other real estate investors are doing right now. Get out your notepad and your pen because we promise to load this with content, and you're going to want to take some notes. Is it okay if I give a free gift to anyone who stays until the end?
Okay, and you'll tell them what that is at the end?
Yep.
So let's go ahead and start off, Kevin, by giving the listener a little bit of background on you. I've obviously carefully selected you. They do have choices, of course. As it relates to hard money, you're not the only game in town. But the reason that I wanted you to be the resident expert on this subject is because you're knowledgeable and you get deals done. Your customer service exceeds that of anyone else. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, give the listeners a little bit of information to know about how you got started in real estate, because that was at a pretty young age, right?
Yeah, and I appreciate all those kind words, Matt. I think it's something that started at a young age. But before I get into too much about my background, I do want to mention that I am the founder of Pine Financial Group, which is a hard money lender. It's the premier hard money lender in both Colorado and Minnesota. And you probably have a picture up on your screen of me and my family. That is me and my wife and my 2 beautiful daughters. So you mentioned a young age. I went into the military right out of high school and had some money in the bank. I wanted to do something with it, so I ended up buying a house. I was 20 years old. Moved into the house, lived there for a few years, moved out, bought another house, and I kept it as a rental. I think that might be how a lot of people get started in this business. My intention was to keep it as a rental property, but it was such an easy transition just buying a new owner-occupied property.
Oh, I see.
And we could talk a little bit more about why it's easier. But I kept it as a rental, so I'm 22 years old, and I'm a real estate investor. I already have my first rental property. And 22 years old, you're still pretty young. I was just getting out of the military. I was going to school, so I didn't have a lot of money. I'm eating top ramen and doing what I can to survive. But I wanted to continue to grow my real estate portfolio. So you've got to learn when you're in that position how to buy properties with little or no money down. I love the financing side of this business. It's the hardest to understand, and it's the most important. Without the financing, a real estate investor is out of business. I also want to mention, Matt, that I've been quoted in several publications, including the Denver Post, Las Vegas Review-Journal, and Yahoo Real Estate. And I'm also the author of a book, The 45-Day Investor, and that book is dedicated to helping beginning investors buy their first or their next property in 45 days or less. So if you're interested in the book, it's at www.45dayinvestor.com. And you're right, it's about the number of transactions, but that book, it goes into much more than just that. It's how to, there's scripts and how to talk to sellers and how to get deals done. It's a fabulous book.
Good. So, you'd mentioned there that you love the financing side, and I found that really interesting. I do too, obviously, which is why we incorporate so much of that into the cash flow coaching piece. I think that's a really big point that you mentioned for somebody that's listening who may not like the financing end. It's something that's not always attractive to every investor, but the more you know about it, the more powerful you become. So would you mind sharing a short story for the listener about one of your clients, just so that they can understand what might be possible for them as well, regardless of where they are right now as an investor in terms of their experience?
Yeah, sure. A story about Rob Cascade, and I put a testimonial up there, and I just love this testimonial. It says, thanks to Kevin, my company is off the ground and running. He provided the get up and go that will propel me forward into something I will never forget. Kevin is someone I trust, and I hope to have a long relationship with. I love this because Rob Cascade was in a position like maybe the listeners in, where they're in an education rut, and they got some goals and things they're trying to accomplish. Rob, he's got a family, and he wants to be the provider for that family. He's got goals. He wants to be a better provider, and he wants some of the material things, the finer things in life, I guess we could say. And he was, like I said, was in the education rut. So he was going to the seminars, listening to the late night TV shows, reading the books, listening to tapes. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Matt. It's all the stuff that you try to do to educate yourself to be successful. I think all of that is absolutely fabulous, and there's some coaching programs that are essential. In fact, I think coaching and mentorships and things like that are essential to being successful. I always have mentors and people holding me accountable to help me reach my goals, and I think it's great. But here's the problem with some of these late night TV junkies or the TV gurus. They don't really know what they're doing. And they're regurgitating information that they read out of a book. They're spitting it all over you. And the fact is, there's holes in a lot of this stuff. And for the listener, if you fall into this category, and I know a lot of us have been through this, it's not your fault. These gurus don't have all the information, and they're not giving you all the information to actually be successful. You want someone that might be a little bit more local, or that's focusing on a like I know you do, Matt, you're focusing on the whole financial plan. It's not actually deal structures for real estate investors from people that don't even do deals. Yeah.
So what you're saying is at some point the rubber's got to meet the road. You can get into that rut where all you're doing is continually educating yourself, but it's kind of that paralysis by analysis scenario, right?
Yeah, and here it is. Here's the thing. My point of saying that whole thing is I don't want the listener to beat themselves up because they haven't been successful and they're out there educating themselves. Educating yourself is important, but if you're not successful right now, it's not your fault. It's because a lot of the information you might have been reading have holes in it. And what we want to try to do, I know, Matt, you try to do the same thing, but we want to try to plug some of those holes so that you can be successful.
Yeah, I agree. Well, filling those gaps is so important. And part of filling a gap means surrounding yourself with the right people, building the right type of team. And I think that you guys bring a lot to that equation. Where would somebody go to get a little bit more free information about you, Pine Financial, and the benefits that you guys offer?
So we have a blog. It's pinefinancialblog.com. We post a couple of times a month different articles and things about real estate investors. Sometimes it's about the market and what's going on that's going to affect you as an investor, and sometimes it's actual real solid meat and strategies to help you be successful. We also offer tons of free events, both webinars and live events, and all that's free again at pinefinancialblog.com.
Well, and as a regular reader of that, I can tell you that I really enjoy it. I think some people just simply put words on paper just to get something out there and published. You guys don't do that. It's extremely relevant. So let's go ahead and jump in. The key for the process to work, obviously, is using hard money. If you're unfamiliar with hard money, what can you tell somebody that's never used it before that would give them just kind of the 20,000-foot overview? Because in most cases, I think there are certain benefits that people aren't even aware of, such as borrowing based on the after repair value of an investment property. And ultimately what we're talking about here is how can people get into real estate either for the first time or even fifth, sixth, 10th property and do so for little to no money out of their own pocket. So tell us a little bit about what somebody needs to know about hard money as we jump in.
Okay, hard money for the listener that doesn't know what it is real simply loans based on, when you're talking about investor loan, hard money. So I want to distinguish here. We're only talking about real estate investors. But they're loans based on the after repaired value, like you said. And the great thing about that, Matt, is that it enables you to borrow more money than you would at a bank or something like that.
Oh.
But hard money, when you think of hard money, you usually think of what?
Personally, I think it's expensive. That's the first thing that I hear comes to a lot of people's minds. Now, I know better, but I had to learn better. Initially, it would have been something that I stereotyped pretty easily as a really expensive loan.
Yeah, and why would I need to do that? I qualify for a cheaper loan and all of that. And I know this is something you teach in great detail, and you do a fabulous job with it. It's not always about the fees or the interest rates or the money that you're borrowing. It's having access to that money to be able to reach a goal that you're trying to accomplish. So the money is just a tool in the tool belt. You can use it or you can not use it. It doesn't really matter unless you're trying to figure out a way to accomplish a goal that requires it.
Right.
So, yes, it's very expensive.
What would the cost be on hard money normally?
You might pay somewhere between 4 and 6 points in origination. Each point is 1% of the loan amount and a fee. And your interest rates we've seen between, 14, 15, up to 18%. So again, I know that's going to scare you, but bear with us here. We're going to talk about how to use it to accomplish a goal, which is creating cash flow by buying multiple properties.
Well, exactly. And obviously that's a pretty tough pill to swallow when people hear 4 to 6 points, 15 to 18%. But thinking back to the cash flow maximization class, and we'll give a link at the end of this if you haven't had a chance to see that cash flow maximization class. That's the debt-free 3 to 5 times faster, including mortgages. One thing that we teach in that class, Kevin, that's extremely relevant to what you're talking about here is that, in my opinion, interest rates are simply interesting. The other half to the equation that determines the total amount of interest that you pay in your life is the term with which you borrow. So how long do you have the loan? And if somebody borrows hard money, but they're using your techniques properly and they're refinancing outside of that hard money and getting conventional financing, long-term fixed money that allows them to keep the property and rent it and cash flow it, they're really only in that loan for a period of a few months. So how much interest do you really pay over the course of a few months on a 15 to 18% loan? So it's irrelevant. That is simply the better way to look at this that I've learned, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I think it's what is the opportunity cost that you give up?
I couldn't have said it better. And I get phone calls all the time, and some of our takeout lenders, the people that do the refinance, which we're going to talk about today, the phone calls I get is, how do I do this strategy without the hard money? It's too expensive. Well, I'll tell you how to do it. You go put 20% down, fund all the rehab yourself, and just buy a property that way. But the key is, I think, Matt, you're trying to say this, is how many deals can you do if that's your strategy?
Yes, because you eat up your reserves over time, and it doesn't take that many properties for a lot of people to eat up every penny they've got. And then you're in greater danger. You don't have the money there for the rainy day, and you've got fewer properties with fewer cash flow. So so let's, this basically what we're talking about here begs the question: at what point does it make sense for somebody to consider using hard money?
Yeah, and I kind of got off track there, Matt, so thanks for pulling me back in. So let's go through the slide here. Why would someone use hard money? Well, one of the first is if the house needs work. And I teach this class of live occasionally, and we have a room full of, 30 to 100 people, let's say. And I'm going through this slide, and I pull up this specific one with this specific picture, and I'll say, okay, how many lenders, mortgage brokers, banks, anything are in the room? And without fail, 3, 4, 5, something like that. They raise their hand. They say, we're lenders. Leave your hand up is what I'll ask them if you could fund this deal. This house, can you put a loan on this house? And I tell you what, 99% of the time, all the hands in the room go down. No bank, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, none of it want to finance this house. It's too ugly. It's not livable. So the only way to finance it is with private or hard money. So a good one, Matt, your question was, when would you use hard money? A good one is if the house needs some work.
Okay, so if the property needs work, a great time to use hard money because there may not be alternative options available to you. So how else could you get the place? And a lot of the properties that our mutual students are currently buying are properties that need work because those are great cash flowing investment properties that have a significant amount of equity left over after the deal is done anyway. So that's excellent. So why else might you use hard money?
Yeah, I want to share one other quick story about the house needs work, and this might strike you, Matt, and especially the listener, as a bit of a surprise, but I get referrals from mortgage brokers sometimes because they can't finance deals, but here's one that I think might surprise you. There was someone that got their house foreclosed on, and it was in northern Colorado, and they were pretty upset about it. So what they ended up doing is ripping some drywall off, tearing out some of the framing and things like that. I mean, they really did a number on this house. But what ended up happening is they tore out a closet in the bedroom. So there was no closet with a door, close rod, all of that kind of thing. The mortgage broker, because of that closet, was not able to finance the deal.
That's amazing. So none of the rest of that mattered. It was just simply the fact that it wasn't conforming anymore because the closet was missing.
That's right. So he had to come and get hard money and get that thing funded, and I was happy to do it.
Now, is this something that would replace FHA? I mean, FHA obviously is probably the most strict as it relates to condition of a property. Is hard money something that an owner-occupant would want to go after at some point?
Probably not, and that's a great question. FHA, they're more strict with the condition, but they also offer rehab loan, which is pretty phenomenal. So if you're going to buy a house to live in it and it needs rehabbing, I would definitely look at the FHA rehab loan. And no, you probably wouldn't want to go hard money because you don't need to spend the 4 points, 18% interest or 15% interest or whatever it is, because FHA will loan you the money to buy and fix it up, and they're really low down payment loans.
Interesting. What are the other few scenarios that might be out there which would justify somebody considering hard money at the time of them trying to structure a deal?
So the next most popular reason is if you need to close on a deal fast. I know when I was really big into buying properties before I started my hard money lending business and really got into the financing stuff, I was buying a property a month, and so I was in the living room with sellers of homes in distress, 3 or 4 living rooms or dining rooms or wherever we were meeting these people, talking through their situations. And when you're sitting there talking with somebody who wants to sell their house, and you can make them an offer and say, I'm going to close Wednesday. 1 week later, if I make that offer to you, Matt, is that stronger or not as strong as someone who's going to do FHA and needs 45 days to close?
So being able to get the deal done quickly gives you negotiating power when you're sitting there speaking with a homeowner that's considering selling.
What's the number one reason real estate transactions fall apart?
Well, I'm guessing if you asked a real estate agent, it would be all because of the mortgage professional.
It's all the financing. Right. That's exactly right. The financing falls apart. So if you give me 45 days to close this deal, that's 45 days where you don't know if it's going to close or not. And it's using a type of financing that is notorious for falling apart. Now, if I say I'm going to close next week, and it's private money, well, even if the financing does fall apart, which it probably won't, but even if it does, you're only losing a week of your marketing time instead of 6 weeks. So it's a much safer offer for the seller, which means usually they'll take a discount. And the cool thing here, Matt, is they're going to take a discount that's probably going to cover the cost of the hard money anyway. So it's not really like you're paying these crazy fees for hard money when you're getting a better deal on the real estate.
Part of the opportunity cost again.
Right.
That's interesting. You'd mentioned sitting in 3 or 4 living rooms a week, and that would translate then into about a deal a month for you, huh? So was that kind of your peak, was doing 1 deal per month?
Yeah, I'd say on average it was 1 deal a month. Now, I would buy a bunch of properties, say in 1 month. I might have 3 or 4 in a month, have a real solid month. But, it was just me and my wife, so we didn't have all the systems in place. We were still learning a lot then. So we couldn't handle too many. We'd stop our marketing to buy properties and focus on getting those other properties that we already own handled. I mean, with our tenants or tenant buyers, or get them sold or wholesaled or whatever it was, before we turned our marketing back on to buy more properties. So on average, it was a property a month over time, but there were some months that we just bought too many where we had to take a month or 2 off to get those handled.
So the 2 areas that we've considered so far is that the house may need work. You've got to be able to close quickly. One thing that you mentioned about closing quickly that I found interesting is that it creates a level of safety for the seller, where the seller has more confidence that the deal is going to close. To dovetail on that, wouldn't you agree then that that same layer of safety is something that's comforting to the buyer too? Because it's not as though a buyer has some sort of control. If they made an offer, they would expect that that conventional financing was going to close too. And when it falls apart, it kind of just leaves you as a buyer in a tailspin, because you're trying to arrange your financial planning and investing process around some of these deals. And suddenly, if it doesn't work out the way you expect it to, now all of a sudden you've got to adjust all of your cash flow projections, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just good for the seller to have that layer of security that the deal is going to get done, but it's also very, very positive, I'm guessing, for the buyer. Is that a fair assumption?
You bring up a really good point, especially if you're using some other type of financing besides hard money. Is at a certain time, your earnest money becomes hard, and it's not going to be refunded to you if you bail on that deal.
Right.
Especially if you're buying HUD homes, then you're an investor. They make that earnest money go hard almost immediately. So you do want to get those things closed so you don't have a whole lot of risk. So, yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up.
So we've got these two areas. Are there any other times where it would make sense for me and the investor or potential investor listening right now to consider using hard money?
Yeah, I said that need to close fast was my next most popular. Well, I didn't mention what my first most popular reason for using hard money was, and that's obviously less cash into the deal, which is what this whole presentation is about, and why I just love the hard money, and I love the strategy we're talking about. We're basing our loans off the after repaired value. Whatever it's fixed up, what's it's worth, we're going to loan on a certain percent of that. So if you could find a good enough deal where you buy it and rehab it and stay under our threshold, you could borrow all of the money. So you could literally have no down payment and do these deals. Now, if you have no down payment or very little down payment into a deal, what does that mean for you?
Well, to me, the first thing that jumps out is return on investment. Immediately, if I think, I might be able to put $5,000 or $10,000 into a real estate transaction, which right now most people aren't even aware you can do, and that includes a fix-up, then the potential return on that investment, if I'm earning $400 or $500 or $600 every month in positive monthly cash flow, is astonishing. So that's what jumps out at me. Is there something else to that too that I should be thinking about?
No, I think that's a great one. And I know some people's strategy is to make as much money per deal as possible. And that's fantastic. It's not my strategy, but I think it's an absolutely fantastic strategy. To do that, you're going to need to put more money into a deal. So what you're saying is if you have less money into the deal, you might not make as much money on the deal, but you're going to make a whole lot more money on your investment. Yeah, absolutely. I love that as one of the advantages of having little money to the deal is your returns go through the roof. The other one is if you have less deals, we talked about money being finite, you only have so much of it. Each of us is different. But if you don't need it to do deals, you can do a lot more deals. The next bullet point is you can do multiple deals when you're using the strategy and really create a large portfolio, and then use your strategy, Matt. Once you have your portfolio where you want, you can use your strategy and pay off the mortgages if that's what you choose to do. Right,
exactly. Just going forward with the cash flow stacking piece that we talk about. And when you layer it, you're using your tools, combining it with the income producing assets, and you ultimately own all of these properties completely free and clear. For a lot of folks, it's a very attractive retirement option. It has to be a tool, as you had mentioned, in the toolbox. And if you're neglecting it as a tool, you just don't have enough education about it to where you're understanding the benefits that it can offer. So can we talk a little bit about the process for a couple minutes, Kevin?
Yeah, and here's where I was talking about giving you guys, or giving you, Matt, and the listeners the information needed to actually go out and do this. We're going to go through the process step by step. The first one is locating a property. So that we could talk about locating a property, how to do it, where to find the deals for a 3-day boot camp. I mean, there's a lot to going out and finding the deal, but here's a couple things I want to share. First of all, as a hard money lender, most of the deals that come across my desk come out of the MLS, or the multiple listing service, which means a real estate agent or a realtor is involved. So I think a valuable real estate agent or realtor, maybe you're a realtor or you were referred to Matt in this presentation from a realtor, I think that is a phenomenal way to find properties. And I think that should be probably on the top of the list of locating properties. Should that be the only thing you do? Absolutely not. But you will find deals in the MLS with the realtor.
Beyond the obvious of the MLS, Kevin, my guess is that you have a number of trade secrets as to how you kind of dig up these bargain investments. What other secrets can you share today to help someone locate that killer deal?
So when you start marketing, this is what we're talking about here, is how do you get the seller of a house to call you and ask you to come out and buy their house? That's really what we want. These are houses that are not in the MLS. Generally, they're not talking to anybody else, and they're calling you on the phone saying, please come over here and buy my house. That's what we want. So you need to have a marketing plan, and the first piece of the marketing plan is to know what you want. You got to know what the target is, and here's some suggestions for picking a target. You need to look at neighborhoods. They have good ratios for purchase price or values, whichever one you're looking at, compared to rent amount. So you've heard the rule, 1%. If you could rent the house for 1% of what you buy it for, you're doing pretty well. Well, we're not buying these things at $120,000. What I'm saying is that's what they're worth, and they're renting for $1,200.
Wow.
So that's the neighborhoods. There's a lower income, blue collar neighborhoods. People move into the neighborhoods, they don't ever move out. So when they move from house to house to house, they stay within the neighborhood. They're great. So that's the kind of neighborhood you want to be looking at and targeting if you want this strategy to work well for you.
That's amazing.
Some people like the pretty houses, and I'm sure you come across this, Matt, the ones that are a little bit easier to manage. That's fantastic. This strategy won't work as well in those neighborhoods. So just to be upfront about that.
No, I appreciate you saying that, because I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how many times have I come across the real estate investor who is so emotionally attached to certain types of neighborhoods or certain quality of homes, and that's fine and dandy. But what I'm finding is the rental ratio doesn't seem to increase with the purchase price. So going up into the $240,000 value with a, let's call it a $180,000 purchase price compared to the $90,000 purchase price and $120,000 value, where you can rent it for $1,200 on the low side. On that high side, you're not getting $2,400 in a lot of cases, right? So buying on the cheaper side, even if it's not somewhere you want to live, might produce a larger return on investment. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's crazy. I mean, you said it perfectly. The $120,000 house rents for $120 if you're, or for $1,200 if you're in the right neighborhood, but a $240,000 house, twice as much in a good neighborhood, it's probably going to rent for $1,400 or $1,500. So you're adding a couple $100 per month in your rent to double the price of the home,
and obviously double the loan amount. So that's that goes straight to the bottom line when we're talking about cash flow. And really, my primary focus as an expert is really trying to make sure that you've got more money left over at the end of every single month. So I really like what you're saying about that. And you talked a little bit about marketing, trying to find these and dig up these killer deals. What type of marketing are you referring to then?
So once we know the neighborhood, we can start targeting that specific neighborhood, and then you go even further in targeting sellers in the neighborhood that might be in distress. So here's some keys to do that. The first one, use with your own caution. I'm not telling you to do it or not to do it. What I am telling you is that I've done it. I have clients that do it, and it works. Okay. So
I think I know where you're going with this, but go ahead.
The ugly signs, we call them bandit signs, that say, we buy houses, it says something else, and there's a phone number. Now, we've all seen those on busy intersections, on and off ramps, off the interstates, which are fantastic, and inside the neighborhoods. And I like those. I'm not doing those now because it's a lot of work, but you could buy these signs for $1 a piece, and they're corrugated plastic. And you go to like banditsigns.com or just Google bandit signs, and I'm sure you'll get plenty of places to go. And here's some suggestions if you do want to use bandit signs. I don't like putting them on the telephone poles which you see a lot of people just staple them or nail them right to the telephone poles. I think that's really ugly, and they get taken down pretty fast. So I think you should use a stake. A wood stake is best, into the ground, and staple your sign onto the wood stake. And here's how I justify it. And Matt, you might think this sounds funny, and you may totally disagree with me, and that's fine. But here's how I justify people doing this. For one, you're buying properties that are in distress, which means they need some work. The property itself is bringing down the appearance and the value of the entire neighborhood. Okay, you're buying them and you're fixing them up, so you're improving the neighborhood. And that's one way for me to justify putting up an ugly sign, because we're increasing the values of the entire neighborhood. Definitely not for everybody. And if you're uncomfortable with it, by all means, do not do it.
Now, you work a lot of time with maybe out-of-town owners. I know that you and I talked a little bit about that at one point. What's that all about?
Yeah, so I love direct mail, and the reason I love direct mail is you're getting a letter or a postcard delivered for you for dirt cheap. What is it, 43 cents a piece, something like that now. Postcards are even cheaper. So direct mail is great because you can really pinpoint your market. You can go to a specific neighborhood and have a specific seller, so I love it. Now, there's a couple of lists that I'm going to recommend for this strategy that we're talking about today, and you mentioned one of them. Matt, it's out-of-town owners. These are really easy lists to get. You can buy CDs at the county level, and what we're looking for here is a property in your target neighborhood where the tax bill is going out of state.
I see.
So when you get this list, there's going to be tax bills going to a different address, which is fine. That means that it's an investment property for somebody. But if they're in town, they might be less motivated than if they're out of town. Now, you can mail them both, but you're going to have a better response and better luck with the landlord that's out of town, because there's a good chance, you said it earlier, Matt, it's an unwanted property. They're a landlord by default. So they want to sell, but maybe they can't wait for it to sell. They can't afford the payments while it's selling. But if you buy it immediately, then they're more willing to work with you. So that's one strategy. Another one I really like is probate. And the reason I like probate is, probate for the listener that doesn't know, is when someone dies and their estate isn't properly documented in the will and all that, it goes into a probate process, and then there's a personal representative assigned that's supposed to liquidate all the assets and pay all the creditors and split up anything that's left over. Well, a lot of times these probate houses might be free and clear, or at least have a lot of equity, and there might be 2, 3, 4 kids involved, whatever it is, and chances are that none of them live in town. They're all in different parts of the country. None of them want to deal with the property, but what do they all want?
Cash.
They all want their cash.
Yeah.
And they don't want it today or tomorrow. They want it yesterday. So these people tend to be pretty motivated when you can find a good one. So probate is another good one. And then finally, one last, and then we've got to keep moving on here, but one last list that does work sometimes is free and clear properties. These are really easy lists. You can buy them from the county as well. All it is a property in your neighborhood that has no mortgage at all, which means the seller has room to negotiate with you and might be willing to offer you the terms or the price that you're looking for. They're not always the most motivated sellers, but it's definitely a situation that you want to be marketing to.
Makes sense. Well, hate to disappoint on the free and clear side of things, but don't bother approaching me about mine, because I'm all about that cash flow. So I'm going to be keeping mine. I think it's a great approach because clearly there is room there, and you're not dealing as much with the desperation. On the reverse side of that coin, clearly the motivation might not be as strong. So that's a very, very important factor to consider. All great techniques. Are there any other dirty little secrets that can help an investor identify the right deal that come to mind, or should we keep moving forward?
I think we could probably keep moving. There's, like I said, we can go on for a 3-day boot camp about this. So you could drive neighborhoods, look for distressed situations, put up flyers on those houses. I've seen, or I've actually done, put important envelopes like FedEx or UPS envelopes on the door with my marketing in it, things like that. All of it works.
Interesting.
But we should probably keep moving so we can get through the presentation.
We'll definitely make sure that everybody has you and your team's contact information so they can obviously discuss some more of these details at any point with you if they choose. So once somebody finds the deal that makes sense for them and their goals, what then is the next step?
So the next step, once you locate and identify a property, is get the thing under contract as quickly as possible. Before you even do too much of your analysis or you're running your numbers, you want to get it locked up and give yourself at least a few days to get your diligence done. So a lot of times you'll see a contract with an inspection clause. I have 7 days with my inspection to tell you if there's something wrong with the property or get out of the property if I see something that I don't like. But the key is to get it under contract as quickly as possible and then do your analysis and put together your repaired budget. The budget, you want to have it as detailed as possible, and you might even want to have an executive summary to list everything that you plan to do with the property so it's real clear to your lender what you're going to do and what it's going to cost.
That's really important advice. Being conservatively accurate with the budget so that you have enough time to back out of the deal if it no longer looks like the right business decision seems critical to me. So what's next then? And Kevin, hopefully I'm not jumping ahead here, but the next step at this point seems to me to get the hard money acquisition loan, right? Because you've got to get the financing in order. So at what point in the process should this happen? Because there are steps like getting your financials to the hard money lender first and sending the contract for analysis. All that is involved, true?
Yeah, and I think it's probably a good idea to get qualified with your lenders before you go out and find a property, but it's not necessary.
Okay.
What's necessary is that you get a good deal, especially if you know you're a strong borrower. Get the good deal and then worry about getting a loan. So I kind of cringe when I say that to you because I'd rather you get qualified first, but if we're going through the steps here of how it actually works, you could just go get the property under contract, get your budget, and then get your hard money loan.
So you haven't talked a lot about Pine Financial, and I appreciate the fact that you want to keep this all about content, but our listener may want a better understanding about what sets you apart. I mean, if you could narrow it down to a sentence or two, what really is the standout about Pine that you think they should know in order to give them an opportunity to consider using you guys?
There's a lot of tangible ones, and I'll go through a few of those, but the fact is that we're the best. I mean, we're doing the most loans in Colorado, more than any other hard money lender on residential properties. We're currently servicing about 80 loans. We've got $17 million to work with. We don't run out of money. We don't say we're going to close and not close.
Oh, okay.
So that's really important. But some of the tangible things that make us a little bit different is, we loan all the way up to 100% of your deals. We will escrow the repair money, but give you an advance at closing so you can get started. We don't have application fees or credit report fees. You don't pay anything to us aside from paying for your appraisal, which you pay the appraiser. You don't pay for anything until we get to the closing table.
Oh, okay. Is that unique to you guys?
We have some competition here in Denver. It's somewhat of a crowded market. So there's other lenders that do charge application fees, other of our competition that doesn't. But I think what's unique is that we don't charge application fees and we advance money at closing, which no one else is doing both of those. Okay.
Well, I think those are all really important, and probably some of that you can take away in your hunt if you don't live in the Colorado or Minnesota area. Those are the only two areas that you service, correct?
That's right.
Okay. So what do you guys charge? Just so I'm clear and so the listeners know, if they don't have a pre-existing relationship with a lender and they're wanting to explore working with you, what is it that Pine Financial charges?
We charge 4 points in origination, 15% interest. Our loan is for 9 months. Payments are made every month, but there's no, like I said, application fees, and we don't have any other hidden fees. So there's no prepayment penalties or anything else when you actually go pay off the loan. You're not going to get any surprises.
It's incredibly reasonable, and you're going to walk us through a couple examples here in a couple moments that I think will help the listener understand why that's so reasonable. Let's go ahead and discuss what the next step is in that process then. So we've located the property, we've got it under contract, we've prepared our budget and our analytics, and now we've explored getting the hard money. Maybe we did that earlier and really were diligent about this. What would be next?
You get the hard money loan, and we actually fund the deal. So like I said, with Pine Financial, we're going to give you the money to buy it and give you the first draw so you can get the repair started. You know, it's important. A lot of contractors are out there asking for materials up front. A lot of them don't have a lot of money, so they can't carry jobs, and they're expecting to be paid a little up front, and especially for materials and most of their labor or the rest of it when it's done. So we give you the money to get started, and the next step is to actually get started. Go out there and get that property fixed up and get it in rental condition. And what I mean by that is you're buying a property that you're going to flip. You might need to do some custom things. And we're seeing a lot of custom in the Denver area right now. You know, the slab granites with a lot of the kitchens are being opened up and the islands with the breakfast bar being put in, that kind of thing. You know, nice hardwood floors. You don't need to necessarily do that with a rental property. If there's hardwood, absolutely finish the hardwood before you carpet it. Okay. You don't want carpet in rentals if you can afford not to have them. Okay. But you don't want to be putting granite in there either, or brand new sinks, or whatever you can clean up, replace what you can't, and then put in used appliances.
What it sounds like you're saying, and something I've really strongly believed, is that to get it into the rental condition compared to preparing it for sale in a flip market it's literally done for a fraction of the price, right? So again, going back to the preservation of funds and making sure that you get into a deal for as little as possible, it's not difficult at all, seeing as how the rental market right now has such a low vacancy rate.
Oh, it's great.
Okay. So the next step after repairing the property, at some point, while the repair is probably happening, you're considering what you're going to be doing in order to get it on the market and start hunting for those tenants, right? Is that the next step?
Yeah, you're going to want to get your tenants the next step, but I want to mention a couple of key pieces of advice here on the repairing the property that I just thought of. And here's what I do with my properties. I've got over 30 now, and I manage them myself. At least the ones in town I manage myself. I have some out-of-state stuff as well, but I pick up paint, and I happen to like the Walmart paint. As crazy as that sounds, I think it's pretty good quality for the price. But I pick a color that I want on my walls, and I put that color and that paint in every single property I own. And you know what happens when I have to go do a tenant makeover and do some patching? I don't need to take a paint chip to Home Depot and see if I can match it. I already know exactly what paint it is. So that's one way that's going to save you a lot of money. And you also want to make your properties hard to damage. So you want to put in hard tiles and hardwood floors and that kind of thing. You don't want to do necessarily the linoleum that's going to rip when they're moving appliances in and out. You know, it sounds so simple, but these are the things that we don't think of when we're repairing the property. And the last thing, Matt, is spend a little extra money to make sure the mechanicals are working. You want the wiring and the plumbing and the HVAC and all of that to be in good condition, because those are the types of calls you're going to get from your tenants when there's problems.
Great advice. As a landlord, I can appreciate that advice.
So moving on here, and get your tenant, and we can, I don't know how much time we have, but we could talk about some strategies to get tenants. I don't find my own tenants now. I use a leasing agent to do this for me, and it's great. The leasing agent charges me 1/2 rent. They bring me leads. They qualify the leads for me, and I get to choose which tenant I put in there. And then I'm changing this now. I want the tenant to come into my office to sign a lease, but in the past they would actually go out and sign my lease, go over my lease for me, all of that for half a month's rent. So they ran the credit report and everything. They were collecting the application fees to cover their costs, but it wasn't costing me anything unless I got the tenant I wanted. So that's what I'm doing now. In the past, I would do some cool things, especially when the vacancy rates weren't as low as they are now. I would take a bunch of phone calls, get my marketing out there, try to get as many people to the property at one time as possible. And that way there's really some competition for that property. And if you just rehab it and it looks new, you're going to be getting more in rent than you probably thought you would if there's more than one person there at a time.
So you're creating that feeding frenzy then.
Oh, I love it. When I was first starting to do it, man, I was all uncomfortable, and maybe the listener can appreciate this if they've tried it or if they're planning to try it. You get a little uncomfortable because you're thinking, what is this prospective tenant thinking when other people start walking in the door? And it is uncomfortable for them. For
right.
me,
you love it.
It's great.
Exactly.
And in the past, it would make me uncomfortable, but I got over that quick when I started putting money in my pocket.
Amen, brother. So using signs, I have a ton of luck with Craigslist. I mean, ultimately, because the vacancy rates are so low, I post one time on Craigslist, and I've got a feeding frenzy just in my email account alone. So I think right now is a a very, very glorious time to be putting up properties for rent, and it should not take people long to get those filled. So after you have the property rented, if an investor wants to take advantage of what I think is an incredible time to buy and hold, and wants to start building this portfolio of cash flowing rental properties, then they're going to need to refi out of this hard money, right? I mean, you can't just keep hard money forever. Even if the rate were better, you couldn't. So because it's a short-term loan, how does that process work? It makes sense for these investors to proceed with exploring the long-term fixed financing probably fairly early on in this process, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of keys, and I'm getting listening to your question, getting ready to answer it, and I'm catching myself wanting to say the key for this whole thing to work is, because it seems like there's a lot of that, isn't there?
Right, yeah, there's a lot of keys all of a sudden.
One of the keys on the key ring is this refinance loan. I mean, you gotta be able to get out of that hard money loan, and this whole thing blows up. But the cool thing about the refinances, we're talking about a rate and term refinance instead of a cash out refinance. And I think it's important to understand the difference. Cash out refinance is when you're going to get, each lender might be a little bit different, but it's anywhere from maybe $1,000 to $2,000 in cash putting in your pocket. You're getting a check from the title company when you close on that refinancing. So they really don't want you to get any money at closing to be a rate and term refinancing.
Okay.
Now, when they're running their analytics, when I say they, I'm talking about the lenders, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the big guys on Wall Street. They run their analytics and they see that the default rates are higher on cash out refinances as opposed to rate term refinances. And it doesn't matter why. What's important is they run numbers and they base decisions on numbers. Okay? So if the loan that's cash out refinance is a riskier loan, that means two things. First, it's going to be harder to get. They're going to put more restrictions on it. And two, it's going to be more expensive to cover the risk. So the more expensive, I don't know if that has a whole lot of relevance here, but what it does is that it's going to be harder to get a refinance. In fact, you cannot get a cash out refinance without seasoning a title 6 to 12 months. You have to own the house 6 to 12 months to get your money back if you pay all cash for the house. That's why you need to use the hard money. You need it to be a rate and term refinance. That's
an incredible piece of information, because that seasoning catches a lot of people. And that ultimately means that you may end up needing a 9-month hard money loan for 12 months. And suddenly the overlap is not what you need and could end up causing some issues. So I think knowing that you can refinance without that seasoning, if you're doing things properly, is incredibly important. So after the refinancing comes in, and let me stop there. And I know we're running short on time here, Kevin, and you've got to get going. But I just want to make sure that people understand that getting pre-qualified for that takeout financing early on is somewhat beneficial for you too, isn't it? You look at that favorably.
Yeah, that's a good point. And in order, step 3 is get the hard money loan. Now, in order to get the hard money loan, at least with my company, is you're going to have to be pre-qualified for that refinance. I don't want you in a deal that you can't get out of, and I don't think you want that either. So we're going to work together to make sure you can get this refinance done. And there's one thing that I pride myself on is I spend a lot of time with my nose in a book understanding the guidelines on that refinancing, and a lot of the times I could help get that done even when the mortgage broker doesn't know what they're doing. Now, the important thing is to work with a mortgage broker that knows what they're doing, and I think, Matt, you know some people, and I do too. So if you need a referral for that, I'd be happy to talk to you. But you definitely need to work with someone or want to work with someone who knows what they're doing, and they don't have what is called overlays on their loan.
And I think
talk about the overlays.
Do you want to talk about it? I mean, I know we're going to run short on time here, and I want you to really show some of the math that goes into this so people understand the value behind hard money and getting into properties for little to no money. So if you have the time, sure, feel free, but I don't want to cut out of these case studies that you're willing to share.
Yeah, and I just get so excited, and I know this is taking a little bit longer than what we wanted to, Matt, but I appreciate you giving me the time here. I want to talk about the overlays for just a brief second, and then we'll cruise through the case study, because the overlay is really what's important. See, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will buy these loans of rate and term refinancing or refinance with no title seasoning, zero. And you can buy today, you can refinance tomorrow, and use a new appraised value. You're not going to use what you bought it for. It's going to be what it's actually worth once it's fixed up. Okay, there's no guideline for title fees. Now, if you go to one of the big banks like, I don't want to say GMAC because they claim to not have an overlay, even though they do. But if you have Bank of America or Wells Fargo or one of these other companies, which most mortgage brokers will send their loans to, they have an overlay that might say, well, we'll refinance this, but you have to be on title for 6 months if we're going to use a new appraised value. Otherwise, we're going to use what you bought it for as the value.
So the acquisition price becomes the value, even if it appraised for $100,000 and you paid $80,000 for it. They're going to use the purchase price of $80,000, not $100,000, even if it's now worth $140,000 because you fixed it up.
Yeah, and that's the Wells Fargo's and the Bank of America. It's these big banks that are providing tons and tons of loans. So if you're out there shopping for this and someone tells you can't do it, well, you're right. You can't do it with their lender. That's why you need to find another lender that has no overlay, because I promise you Fannie Mae will buy the loan.
That's a phenomenal piece of advice, and we'll probably hang up folks who do not have a strong enough understanding of that. So I appreciate you wanting to take a moment and explain it. Now, you offered to share a couple case studies with us. I'm hoping we're not using up so much of your time that you're unable to do that at this point. I'm a numbers person. A lot of the folks that have seen my debt-free class are numbers people, and I really love to see this in action.
Let's go through Worcester, and one of the, for those people in the Denver area might recognize this neighborhood. It's the classic Montbello house. We talked about Montbello a little bit earlier, but it's the type of neighborhood we want. So this is a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, the ranch with a basement, attached 1-car garage, and here are the numbers. So you got a purchase price of $71,000. This was actually purchased from a foreclosure auction from an auction buyer and then wholesaled to the buyer, which means he bought it for, I think he paid $65,000 at the foreclosure auction.
That's remarkable.
And then he sold it for $71,000, so he charged a little bit of fee, get his cash back, and then he goes to the auction and buys something else, and that's kind of how he runs his business.
Okay.
So it was what we call a wholesaler.
Okay.
Bought it for $71,000. $10,000 in repairs, and again, now we talked about it. It's not a whole lot of repairs. You got to make sure it's safe, it's mechanically sound, and then it looks good. But you're not putting in the high-end, high-quality finishes.
There are tenants everywhere, so you're going to appeal to somebody who will be a good tenant.
That's exactly right. And it's going to be clean, and people want it.
Okay.
So CC stands for closing costs, and that's the closing cost to buy the property. That's going to include your hard money and your title fee.
So that includes what's being paid to you or someone like you.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So in this example, and you can see that I'm rounding here, but these are real close. This is an actual deal. These are real close numbers. $4,500 total acquisition if you add the three. $85,500 to buy this property and fix it up.
Wow. Okay.
Again, $120,000. This is what the appraisal came in at. Hard money loan, we loaned $84,000, which is 70% of the after repaired value. Now, I'm not a math magician, but I mean, you can see the acquisition $85,500, the loan $84,000. How much money did you need at closing?
You know, it would end up being about $1,500 if my math is correct.
$1,500, yeah. And you had $1,000 in earnest or something like that, so you're really coming to the closing table with $500. Now, this isn't a no money down deal, but it definitely fits within our little money down scenarios.
Wow. Okay. So $1,500 out of pocket, and this property, do we have numbers in terms of what it was renting for and what the potential ROI is on this thing?
Yeah. Let's keep going here to the next slide. So talked about one of the steps is refinancing it. When you refinance it, there's more costs to get the refinance done. So now you got 2 sets of closings. So you got to understand that this is not the cheapest way to do it, but in my opinion, it's one of the best ways to do it. Again, refinance costs $2,500 refinance loan. These lenders will go to 75% loan to value with the new appraised value. Your hard money lender is probably at 70, so it gives you 5% buffer there. And as long as the appraisals are similar, you should be able to roll all of your closing costs into that refinance loan.
Oh, I see. So that 5% buffer gives you room for that extra $2,500 in closing costs.
Yeah, so you borrow that too, so you don't have any money when you go to the closing. So now all you have into the deal so far is maybe some payments, but you have the $1,500 that we talked about.
Okay.
86.5. I don't know what the interest rate was on this one, but this is the actual payment.
Probably doesn't really matter if we're getting enough cash flow out of the thing.
No, you're right. This year payments are going to be lower now than when this deal was done. I could tell you this was several months ago, and rates are lower than they are now. But in any case, it's going to be close. $663 PITI. That's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, everything.
So
and
this
again, it rents for $1,200.
Includes all of the escrows and renting now for $1,200, which is in excess of $500 every single month in cash flow.
Gross cash flow. Now, sometimes I'll get the feedback, well, you're not accounting for maintenance, you're not accounting for vacancies. Well, I'm not claiming to. Look, it's the gross cash flow. I don't know what the maintenance and the vacancies are. I know it's rented for $1,200. I know the payment's $663. I know it's a damn good deal. And
you also know that you just put $10,000 into the place, so if you did a good enough job with the money that you had to work with, you probably don't have a ton of additional maintenance that should be expected immediately upon getting this property rented. Over time, of course, that could happen, but you're also cash flowing this thing $6,000 plus every single year.
Yeah, and so there's going to be some additional costs, right? This is not a net cash flow. I just want to be clear, it is a gross cash flow, but that's the numbers that we have to work with since we don't know what the maintenance and vacancy are in this specific example.
Okay.
Okay, so the notes here I wanted to point out is it took 2 months to rehab and get a tenant, and during that time there was one hard money loan payment, so you had the $1,500 out of your pocket plus the $1,050 for the hard money loan out of your pocket. And the refinance took 5 months, which is way more time than it should take. This guy just was a total slacker and didn't get what he had to get done so he could get the refinance done.
Interesting.
But once it's rented for $1,200 and your payment's only $1,050, even with the hard money, you're still making enough to cover the hard money.
Yeah, you're still cash flowing it. It's beautiful.
Here's my calculation here. This is how I calculate our ROI, and I think this is pretty universal. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Matt, but $537 a month times 12 months equals $6,444 a year. I take my $1,500 and my $1,050. Only one of these came out. Only one of these came out of pocket because, and we could talk about it if you want, but the way the mortgage payments are paid in arrears, and you skip your first month's payment.
Exactly.
But just to be real conservative, I put the full 2 months, since that's how long it took them to get a tenant.
Okay.
So money into the deal, $3,600, but you understand it's actually less than that.
Right.
Okay. 6,444 divided by what you have into it each year, 179% return on investment, year after year after year after year.
We're
not talking about your appreciation. We're not talking about the tenant paying off your mortgage for you or paying down your mortgage. We're not talking about the equity you already have when you bought it.
You're not talking about depreciation, right? Depreciation. I mean, this is a real case study, right? 179% ROI. So why isn't everybody doing this?
Because they don't know about it, maybe. I don't know. The listener that's listening to this right now is going to do it. Right?
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. So can we do another one?
Yeah, let's go through one more here because I wanted to show that there is no money down deals out there as well. And this one's in Colorado Springs. Is that a pretty house or what?
Oh, boy. Again, if you don't pay me royalties, you can expect a lawsuit, buddy. Let's go through it first. I mean, this thing, sure. You and I have had a conversation about this, and I want to make it very clear that this isn't every deal that's available, but the proof is in the pudding that these types of deals are out there. And so people just need to realize it so that they can, set their standards.
Yeah, this is a deal that actually did get done in Colorado Springs, but this was a little bit more risky, and the reason is this is a non-conforming threeplex. So you can see it's a single family. It looks like it from the outside, but it's been converted to 3 separate units. So it's going to produce much more cash flow.
Okay.
Okay, so the purchase price, $78,000. It's actually right in a college, right near a college, so it's all students that are living there now. Repairs $21,000, a little bit more than our Worcester example because there's 3 kitchens, there's the 3 bathrooms, and there's more when you have 3 different units. So 1,000, and you can see it's more beat up house.
Yeah, I was going to say I think the picture explains it.
Okay, so the closing cost, $5,800. Again, hard money, title fees. The total acquisition, $104,800.
Okay.
Value, $150.
Nice.
Loan amount, $105. How much money did you need at closing on this one, Matt?
I'm guessing none.
None. Yeah, in fact, and it doesn't always work out this way, but he got all of his earnest money back plus $200 to do this deal.
I mean, that's phenomenal. Not only that, but even after the refi, one thing that we didn't talk about on Worcester is the fact that there's this tremendous equity position, or at least a perceived equity position, that's left over even above and beyond all the cash flow.
That's right.
And it looks like that's going to be the same here too. So what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, we're adding value when we're doing the repair, so there is built-in equity. It's what a lot of people will call sweat equity.
Okay.
In any case, let's keep moving on here. Refinance costs $3,000. Refinance alone, 108. We had a lot of 105, so we rolled all the closing costs in again. PITI on this one, rates were a little bit lower at this time, $680. Again, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, everything. Rent, $1,650. Is that crazy?
That's unbelievable. I mean, this is gross cash flow, which to me, it seems highly extraordinary. What would you encourage an investor to consider as a smart cash flow position if they wanted to buy and hold? Do you have an answer to that? I know it's kind of the $1 million question. Is there kind of that target that people should look for?
I just can't answer that because different neighborhoods are different. Maybe an investor's likes the cash flow, but is going to speculate and try to bank on appreciation, so they're willing to take less cash flow in hopes of appreciation, which I totally disagree with, but it's some people's strategy, and it has worked well for some people. So it really depends on their situation, what their goals are, and what they're comfortable with.
Okay.
If you're looking at just the worst neighborhoods, your cash flow is going to be better. And if you want the nice neighborhoods, your cash flow is not going to be quite as good.
Okay, fair enough. So the gross cash flow here, $970 every single month. What else do you have to add to this case study that's important for the listener to hear?
2 hard money loan payments were made before it was fully occupied. I'm only saying that because once it's occupied, the tenants cover the payment, so in calculating our ROI, I think it cancels each other out. So I just want to know what was in before it started producing income.
Fair enough.
So two payments. ROI, real quickly, $970 a month times 12 months, $11,640 a year. You just gave yourself a raise, Matt. How's it feel?
You know what? I'll never turn one down.
Zero money into the deal plus 2 payments, $2,625, and you can see the simple math here. 443% gross ROI year after year after year.
You and I could obviously agree that now is an exceptional time to buy real estate. And there's no real bad market in real estate. A mutual friend of ours once said that it's either a buyer's market or it's a seller's market. So it's always a good time. And I always took that away and thought, wow, that's kind of profound. So this is a phenomenal time to get involved. You're proving it right here. There's no question about that.
Well, first I want to mention again that the blog is totally free, and you can go there at any time, pinefinancialblog.com. Tons of free and current information for real estate investors. Look, all I do is work with real estate investors. We look at deals, we advise them, we want to close deals, we want to help you close deals. So it's all about the investor. Okay, we have lots of live classes, we do things like this with you and others, and you can apply for loans right there on the blog. So the free gift, here it is. I want to give you a report which breaks down, and this time we're not going to be in such a hurry since it's in the report, breaks down what we talked about today. And it's in a nice little report here that you could use to hand out to your clients, to your friends, to your family. Get them excited. Get the people around you out there doing this. And if you want something to reference, to remember how to go and do this and what steps to take, it's all right there and it's free.
Incredibly generous. I really appreciate you not only giving something like this away, but sharing all the content that you did, because when practiced, it's life-changing. And I completely agree that together we have the ability to do amazing things by helping people understand this information. And remember, cash flow, when added to education, equals power. So VIP would love to thank Kevin Amolsch with Pine for sharing this information today. It's extremely relevant to our cash flow maximization education. And we obviously encourage all listeners to do their homework before working with any organization. But we've done our research, and I've come up with nothing but great results about Pine and about you, Kevin, about your services. So if for any reason you'd like to use another organization, then we can provide you with their information or some alternatives But just remember, it's important to work with people who are knowledgeable, who have great customer service, and who can simply get the deal done.
And I just want to throw one thing in here before we get off, Matt. Is that okay?
Please do.
You say this best in your live events, and you know, it really strikes me when you say it, and I want to throw this out there for your coaching and for this free report or whatever it is, the decisions you make to advance your career and advance your financial life and your happiness, really, you need to take these steps. And you can take these steps and join your coaching or download this free report, which has absolutely no risk at all. You can do that and you can improve your life, okay? Or you can not, and you can stay exactly where you are.
I really appreciate your time and generosity. Obviously, anybody that wants to follow up with you, we will provide an email follow-up that gives you some information about how to get in touch with Kevin beyond the blog or some of his teammates. And we'll also throw in there access to the debt-free 3 to 5 times faster, including mortgages class, so that you can watch that if you haven't seen it already or if you'd like to watch it again. Thanks a lot for being on our team. Appreciate your time and insight today. And we'll talk here again soon, buddy.
All right, man. Appreciate everything. Bye.
Take care.